The Cold War is a turning point in history because afterwards the countries' position in the world now derived on their economic abilities rather than their military prowess. Europe united and became the world's largest market and trader. The Cold War united Europe and helped develop countries economically. It was the closest we ever came to destroying humanity and the world. The Cold War is a modern example of conflicting ideologies leading to war. Quote, "The world's intellectuals themselves must see that communism is the deadliest enemy that intellectualism and liberalism ever had." End quote. Before the Cold War, World War I began July 28, 1914 to November 11, 1918 because of a large-scale alliances between the powers in Europe, and the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand was the start of the war. After World War I, Germany took the blame and lost a lot of land and many freedoms. Hitler then came into power in 1933 and promised to bring Germany back to its greatness. World War II began September 1, 1939, when Germany invades Poland. Germany succeeded in taking over much of Europe and began to focus on Britain, while at the same time Hitler decided to attack Russia, breaking their treaty. December 7, 1941, Japan bombs the U.S. naval base in Pearl Harbor and brings the U.S. into the war. On June 6th, the Allies launched the biggest sea-to-land invasion at Normandy. They succeeded in gaining a foothold in northern Europe. The Allies began to march straight towards Germany from the west, while Russia advances from the east. At the same time, large naval battles happened between the Allies and Japan in the Pacific. May 7, 1945, Germany surrenders its forces on both the western and eastern fronts. And on August 6, 1945, the U.S. drops the world's first atomic bomb on Hiroshima, Japan.
During the Cold War. The Cold War solidified in 1947 to 1948 when the U.S. brought Western Europe under its influence and, quote, "it was no coincidence that Marxism caught hold and blazed for the first time in Russia," end quote. The Soviets installed left-wing governments in Eastern Europe that was liberated by the Red Army with the intent of spreading communism worldwide. The Warsaw Pact and NATO formed in 1955. A telegram, quote, "convinced many that the Soviet government was a monstrous force fanatically committed to destroying the United States and the American way of life," end quote. The U.S., quote, "sought by all means short to war to block further exposure of Soviet power," end quote. Russia installed missiles in Cuba, which was known as the Cuban Missile Crisis, in 1962. Then, a nuclear test ban treaty of 1963 was enacted to end all underground testing for nuclear weapons. Strategic arms limitations talks led to less tensions during the Cold War, and it started to break down under Gorbachev's rule as he tried to democratize the Soviet system. The Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, which then resulted in the end of the Cold War.
The space race. The space race is often forgotten about when people think about the Cold War. It was a way for the USSR and the United States to show their technological supremacy over each other. Millions of people from both countries watched on TVs and listened on radios as the space race unfolded. Timeline of the space race. October 4th, 1957, Sputnik was launched. October 1st, 1958, NASA was formed. April 12th, 1961, Yuri Gagarin became the first man into space. May 5th, 1961, first U.S. astronaut into space. December 14th, 1962, Mariner 2 becomes the first spaceship to fly past Venus. March 18th, 1965, the spacewalk was completed by the USSR. And on July 20th, 1969, Apollo 11 landed on the moon, and Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin became the first people on the moon.
After the Cold War. Long term. U.S. spy plane. Secret CIA spy jet.
The USSR shot the jet down in 1960. The jet's specialty was that it was able to take detailed pictures of the ground from 20 feet in the air. The Interstate Highway System, a nationwide network of roads, it began in 1956, was made so supplies and troops could get to places quickly. Emergency Broadcast System, made in 1963 so the president could alert the public about invasions. It was put to public use for entertainment and such in 1976. Nuclear warhead stockpiles. U.S. made 70,000 since 1945. Today, the U.S. has 9,600 warheads and Russia has 5,200 ready to launch, denoting even 8 could end humanity.